afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important 90 minutes of your day. Hi, I'm Michael, the Opportunity Ambassador and MC for today's show. And today's show is another in our series of the Artistry of Loving Relationship entitled The Art of Acceptance. With me today are my valued co host. The first up is Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator.
Nice to be here. I'm so glad for everybody who's tuning in.
Willow, our trauma consultant.
Hi, everyone. Also, the name is wrong. So we are talking about something different than fermenting freedom, I promise.
I promise. I updated it twice. So this is a glitch that happens with OBS. Watch out for OBS.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Blessed love and greetings, everybody.
Nice.
And Shambhavi is our very special guest for today's show.
Hello, everyone. I am a guest. I don't know how special I am, but I'm very happy and privileged to share this most important 90 minutes of my day with you.
It's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So where do we want to begin with this show? Where do we introduce this? Acceptance sounds pretty easy.
Well, we could start with the main question again.
Well, yesterday we were talking to Shambhavi a little bit during our pre-show meeting, and she talked about this concept of not pushing back?
Yeah. So let me, can I offer a little bit of personal insight and how this came about that
Sure.
I was willing to share with you?
Please.
So I am sure most of us don't wake up in the morning and say, well, let me see how I can create a loving relationship. And I know for myself, I certainly wasn't one of those people. But as love doesn't happen, love is, that also happened for me, that I fell into discovering my way. And I by no means am advocating that this is going to work for everyone or that this is everyone's truth. This is my experience and my truth for me. So by sharing this, if it triggers anything positive in anyone, and for that matter, anything negative, which is also part of loving relationship, I think, then let it happen. So when I was 5 years old, I was born in Croatia, and I'm one of the two children. And when I was 5 years old, my father got involved in a brawl, and as a consequence of it, a man died. I was pretty young, and I didn't really comprehend the enormosity of tragedy and trauma that happened. However, from the very first moment when it happened, I remember I found excitement in what was. I remember my mom and dad going for my father to report himself into the police station. And I was pretending I had a skipping rope, and I was skipping in front of them, being happy that I was making my way into the city, because going into the city, we got to go only on special occasions. So immediately, my soul didn't go into the depth of darkness, but found the lighter aspect of isness. So life went on, and in my teenage, my parents left the former Yugoslavia and moved to Canada. And from Canada, I met my spiritual teacher in Trinidad and Tobago, and I was asked to accompany him on his tours. And one of the tours was to Jamaica. And I remember he was to speak at a high school, and out of nowhere, he turned around to me and he says, "You will go and take on stand." And I started objecting, and I said, "Well, I don't have anything prepared. I have nothing to say." He says, "You'll find something." And I went to the podium and I looked, and out of me came words that I haven't thought about. The feelings I haven't thought about for 40 years. I was maybe 45 at that age. And words went something like, "You're probably wondering, what have we in common? I'm white, you're black, you're young, I'm older. I know what's it like to be you." And in Jamaica, Dennis would attest and know, probably in every family, there is a death by murder of some sort. And I could feel the bodies and the energy in the stadium relax. And I remember all of a sudden a very peaceful moment. And I went on to say, "I know what's it like to be you. My father killed a man, and I know what's it like to live in a fear. And I know what's it like to be embarrassed and shamed and scared." Anyway, this lasted very short period of time, my little speech, and basically it went on to say, "But I have managed to change my life, and I can teach you how to change yours." And then I gave them available information. So after that, every kid in that school came to tug on my sleeve and speak to me. And I made some very long-lasting friends. After I went home, I got thinking, how is that I got so accepted so fast? And I really truly felt love. The kids will hold me by the hand and call me auntie and just start walking along. And I recognized an information was downloaded to me. You got accepted because you were accepting. And from there on, I knew that first relationship of loving intimacy starts with me. And when I was able to verbalize my shame and my fear and share it with willing to be vulnerable, people accept it. And I recognized because I accepted it, they accepted it. And that became almost a rule for me. When I was listening to Dennis and Willow talk earlier about where in your body is your stress stored, I learned to create a chute through my body. And when I started feeling something like that, I would immediately accept it, recognize it, accept it, and direct it through my personal chute to dissolve into the ground.
So how does that look in practice? Like, for example, if there's conflict or challenge of some sort?
There is one common tool that we all have to resolve any challenge that we may have in our life. And each and every one of us that is alive have it. You know what that is? Breath. That's right. It's the breath. So the minute I recognize that something is building up, that I am creating a confrontation, or that I am creating resistance to whatever it may be, I take a deep breath, I recognize that it's feeling uncomfortable. I accept it. And then I open the chute and let it leave. And I know it's just energy, and I know that energy circulates, and I also know that I have a choice. Do I want to circulate it or do I hang on to it? And believe you me, this is not practice to perfection. There are days that I hang on to it and I'm going to let it go in spite of the fact that I know what to do, but I'm going to do it, after I kill that fly that's bugging me. So, it's not to say, hey, here is Miss Muffin perfect and no, but I have learned techniques that make life easy and enjoyable. And when my life is easy and enjoyable, then I can be more loving toward everything in relationship to my earth, I have accepted myself, angry, mad, ugly, messed up hair, drunk, sober, whatever, but I have accepted it. And from that, also huge question, why do we have so much turmoil in today's society? Because we are this, and what is the word in English now? I'm grasping for it. We are not honest with ourselves.
Dishonest.
Disingenuous,
yeah.
Disingenuous with ourselves.
Disingenuous.
That's right. Thank you, Willow. And we carry it, and my neighbor carries it, and my child carries it, and all of a sudden we create a community, heavy negative, disingenuine field.
So would that be like an egregor that you build, right, between each
That's
other?
Right. We build.
Yeah.
But we also have a choice
to build a different one.
Yeah, we have a choice to transform ourselves. We can't transform anything from outside. We can only transform things from within. So it is constant loving relationship
with yourself,
which is going to portray itself in my environment. And Villa?
Well, what you were talking about, like with the breath and accepting yourself and all this stuff, it reminds me of a common blockage that I see in myself, as well as a lot of my clients, which is why I'm good at helping my clients, because I have experienced a lot of these same things. So breathing regulation can often be triggering to people who have part of their trauma is restriction of breath. So one of the biggest issues with me and a lot of people who have panic attacks is they will be like, okay, I'm having a panic attack. I am stressed. But they can't accept that this is unbearable. So there's a further step where you're doing the breathing, it's not helping, nothing's helping, and you get to that point where you're like, I'm about to lose my mind. I'm about to lash out. I'm about to do whatever. And Agnieszka actually helped me with this, because I would call her and I would try to seek validation through her, and she'd be like, well, try this, and none of it would work. And it wasn't until she finally gave up on trying to offer me solutions and just was like, you're having a really hard time right now. You're unable to deal with this right now. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I can't handle this right now. That was my acceptance of what was going on, where it's like, this is too much. And it wasn't until I accepted that this was too much, that I couldn't fight through it, that I was able to be like, okay, let me do the self-soothing techniques. Let me listen to my body and what it's needing. Sometimes it needs to go lay down and pass out for a couple hours and just not be there. But as long as I know what I'm doing and why I'm using that tool, it makes the shame not as strong. So whenever I need to go pass out and disassociate for a while, I don't have a problem doing it, because I know why I'm doing it. And I accept that there's a reason I'm acting this way. So I really like the way that you put it, because it's so easy. These things are so minute. They happen so quickly, and it's such a minute little thought or decision that you think that you're going to be sitting there and be like, oh, okay, here's my meditation process. Here's all this. It doesn't happen like that. It's a quick single thought where you're like, this just is what it is right now.
That's right. And also, if that still lingers in a heavy cloud, then I have my chute, and I open my ground chute, and I recognize, yes, you were part of me, but you no longer serve me. Goodbye. And I will mentally dislodge it from my energy body.
So it's like a toilet.
Like a
Goodbye.
toilet, yeah. You know, exactly like a toilet. Exactly like a toilet. And, you know, don't be surprised that sometimes you will actually have an instant urge. This is why people often say, oh, I got a diarrhea, you know, I get a irritable bowel syndrome because I'm nervous. They don't realize that subconsciously they're actually expelling the toxicity out of their system. But accepting yourself and not pushing at it, because as in, if two people start pushing at each other, so this one person, this is the other, and they start pushing on each other, it exerts off a lot of energy. But if one is pushing and the other one is not pushing, this one has no place to go.
That reminds me of dancing. So when you have your, you know, I'm going to pull a Dirty Dancing quote here, you know, not noodle arms, but firm arm. I can't remember what she says, but like when you're dancing, if someone's pushing towards you, you're allowing it. You're moving back. When they're pulling you, you're moving forward. You're learning. It's basically transforming into a pushing argument into a dance. Let's see how this flows, and you learn to like flow with the situation.
Isn't that how capoeira works?
The image I just got, yeah, the image I just got is, you know, stop pushing against the door and accept that it's closed. And when you stop pushing against it, you know, you might realize that it actually opens the other way around.
It opens inside, not outside.
That, or it's labeled pull and you didn't read, because that's happened numerous times for me.
But yeah, capoeira, like it works like that. Like the, you know, if one goes forward, the other one goes backward. So there's no direct confrontation, but it's like a back and forward and trying to find a way around and finding a way in. So yeah, so it, you know, that could be described as well. Like if an attack comes, then instead of trying to block it, you go with it and you dodge it. And through that, it's possible that like a physically weaker opponent or someone just like the enslaved Africans in Brazil who would use it to fight against people that were armed, that were in a better position and had better nutrition, in every way were better armed as them. Or they had a chance to overcome because they did not seek a direct confrontation, but they sought strategies and ways how to overcome an opponent that was in many ways stronger.
I also wanted to point out that when you exemplify, maybe that's not the right word, but when you show that you have acceptance for yourself, so if someone is pushing against you and you're not fighting back, like you're not pushing back, you're actually allowing them, you're accepting them too. So it allows a safe area for them to say, they're not telling me they're not pushing back against me, they're not fighting.
Telling me I'm wrong. Yeah, they're not telling me I'm wrong. They're validating, silently validating. And in that process, you have to have a couple tools. One of them is you have to be willing to be vulnerable. Two is you have to learn to trust to a certain extent. Because, you know, we walk around somewhat paranoid in today's world, and we have few and far in between people that we are willing to trust. But if we learn to somewhat, and I can talk about surrender a little later, but if we are willing to, at least to a certain degree, surrender in trust or surrender in knowing, we are most likely not going to feel the huge resistance that normally we would. So I very quickly recognized that, acceptance really makes life easy. And I was able to check my understanding and accept it no matter what it was for just isness. I didn't necessarily have to like it. I didn't necessarily have to agree with it. It didn't have to feel good, but it was part of my life in whatever form it appeared.
But, you know, as a Slavic woman, we're all full of like piss and vinegar, feisty and like scrappy. And how do you do that? Like, you want to be just like, this is wrong and I need to fix this and the world needs to change and this is injustice or this is not right and how dare you treat my friend this way or whatever stuff. You know, all of that.
In that case, let's say all that's true.
Huh?
Let's say all that's true. You know, you're full of piss and vinegar. You want to fight. You want to defend. You have to accept that about yourself and say, is a defensive position really the best offense right now? You have to accept. Ultimately, you have to accept that to even begin to change it. And I'd also like to point out, this is something that doesn't really cross your mind until you're in the process of doing it. A lot of people resist acceptance because they think it means that they are condoning the action.
Also, the way I have come to overcome the ego, and this is what that is when the ego and the soul make peace with each other. And for me, I can tell you how it happened for me, but it won't matter because each one of us would have our own journey and our own path. But I'll tell you, it happens so instantaneously that you don't even have time to say here. It happens when it happens. And when it happens, that you get to meet your soul, you get to meet yourself, and the self is godly, then all of a sudden you don't have that huge need to confront and to be the vigilante for everyone and everything. All of a sudden, you know that there is higher force which is going to guide you and which is going to, if I allow, make you into that beautiful dance. And when you have that trust and you're willing to be vulnerable and you learn to listen to yourself and back to the trust, then it all happens. You don't have to do anything. It just simply is.
But what if I like riding the untamed horse?
Great.
I understand why.
Great.
Well, what does that give you?
Even without a result, as long as you're enjoying, because our life is supposed to be, we're here just to enjoy it and to evolve. And if we're not enjoying it, we're most likely not evolving. Because when you're at peace with yourself, then nothing else is going to throw you off your track for any length of time. You may get thrown and bumped around a little bit, but then you check with yourself, you shoot it out, you listen, you show empathy.
I need to write that down.
You trust, and then say, hey, you know, that was a brief moment that I really enjoyed, and I don't have to do that again.
Sorry, gotta write it down.
What are you writing down?
We are here to enjoy life, and if you're not
enjoy and evolve.
Enjoying
Joy
life,
and evolve. I like that.
you're not evolving.
Yeah,
That's another one of those like hugs over masks. Enjoy and evolve. One of those slogans. Oh, maybe that's why I got. Never mind.
Well, you know, this is a good example. I have, and I've shared this with Dennis, I think, many times. I have created such resistance in my body and in my mind towards the mask, and carrying it, knowing, being conscious that it's not the mask that I'm in fact resisting, but every time I see a mask, I see a freedom sign. And I went back to checking how to take a lemon and make lemonade without dodging. And I think that I've asked myself, what am I to do? And the only thing that came up was trust and know thyself. And I don't think that'll ever lead me astray.
At least not for long.
In fact, it's not that I think, I know. Like, you know, when you know, in my pit of my body, I know that trusting in a higher vibration, which I am part of, will not lead me astray. And I just surrendered to that.
Even if it seems like it's leading you astray, it's often just taking the more difficult path to some kind of a higher understanding.
The detour.
Yeah,
maybe it's not even. Maybe it's not the detour. Maybe it would take 20 years to go this way, so you're going the hard way.
Well, no, I'm not saying a shortcut. I'm saying a detour. When do you take a detour in traffic? When there's a blockage up ahead. When there's road work. When you can't get through there so easily, you take a detour. It's a workaround.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? I don't look at it as a detour. I say, wow, universe has something more beautiful to show me this way. I have learned to enjoy my life. And if I've decided to take I-75 and it takes me along to I-15, I said, wow, I-15's got to be more beautiful than I-75. And I am going to probably meet someone very exciting around that area. And I will go with that promise. So there is going to be no resistance to it.
Or see something cool. Go ahead, sorry.
I was really reminded when you were talking about the mask situation, a memory popped up in my mind. I was walking with my husband, and I have a resistance because I don't know if you know this. I talk about it pretty openly, but I have panic attacks whenever I cover my nose and my mouth. I can't even sleep with the sheet over my head because I will wake up freaking out. I can't even go to sleep, to be honest. So we were walking, and I saw these people out riding bikes, mowing their lawn, doing all these things with a mask on, and they're like laboring to breathe. And my first reaction was, why are these people so stupid? Why are we surrounded by stupid people? And I was like, all right, okay, noted. I feel defensive about that. And I started thinking about my reasons for not wearing a mask. And I said, ultimately, I'm not wearing a mask because I feel more panic when I put the mask on than when not wearing it and not complying. And so I switched that around, and I was like, what if that's what they're doing? What if they feel less panic when they comply? Which is sad, and I can feel sad about that, but maybe their panic-inducing moment is for an authority figure, like the weird looks that they get because people look at you weird when you're not wearing a mask, or
So you mean running around with scissors and cutting them off is not the right way to go about it?
No, that is a NAP violation, and it should not be done.
Speaking of the masks, when I choose not to wear a mask, I simply don't wear a mask. And I don't push back. People tell me, stop me, and they say, oh, you don't have a mask. And I said, thank you for pointing that out. I'll consider wearing one next time. I don't push back. Just, I validate their opinion. Very good, thank you. But not everything that comes my way do I have to let it stick.
Is it like a plate of cookies? They're offering you cookies. You don't have to eat one if you don't want to.
That's right. And you can even take it
and throw it away.
Put it in your pocket, give it to the next person, whatever your choice may be. We have a world of choices, but it doesn't have to be a pushback. Every time I push back, I exert my own good energy. And I ask, do I have a better place to exert that energy? I create little crazy rules, little crazy place for myself. I'll give you an example. I think it's easier to give than to take. Don't ask, but that's what I feel. Every morning I have a principle before I go and take my coffee or do something, I make sure I give something first. And if I have nothing to give, I have plants, and I will take water, and I will first go and water my plants. And I will have exerted, or I have practiced, or I have given my generosity. And in that moment, I will acknowledge the plant, I will listen to it, I will see if it needs more food, if it's telling me go away, I don't want to see anyone today. And the same thing with people. If there is a person standing outside and I have a tomato plant, I will pick up tomato and I will say good morning, and I will give them a tomato.
You don't throw the tomato, you give it to them.
Yeah, I'll give it to them.
I like that you mentioned that, because I didn't realize that's what I'm doing for myself. I have this new little practice where every morning I drink a glass of water first thing before my coffee, and I realized that I'm offering myself water, and then I can take the coffee, and when I have the coffee after I've had my water, I actually feel like I'm enjoying it, like it's a gift, like I'm actually giving myself a good experience instead of taking energy, because that's what it felt like when I was just getting up, drinking my coffee. I'm taking energy, and it was easy for me to do that, but I would be exhausted later through the day. So I think the mental practice of offering myself water before I engage in a more pleasurable act allows those pleasurable events to be gifts instead of a desperate attempt to take something.
Yeah, someone said once, the best form of generosity is to listen. And then I reversed that and I said, listen to whom? If we are in essence all one, so then I can listen to myself and see what comes up. And if you want to call it meditation, or if you want to just call it interaction with the space, or whatever label you want to give it. But I make sure that I enjoy it. And it won't be a cookie cutter thing either. Today I can water the plant. Tomorrow I can, I don't know, paint a picture for somebody, or whatever it might be. But it'll be something that I'm going to start my life with joy, with enjoyment. I just absolutely love the freedom of entertaining, of having people, of being generous, of feeding humanity. And I think that is the part of our Eastern European culture. And I recognize it, I accept it, and I roll with it, even though it's not always convenient for everybody. But, when you come to my house, just know you're going to have to eat.
Yeah, I was trying to explain to somebody yesterday about how it looks when you visit somebody like who's Eastern European, or, I said those ethnic Europeans, and I said, they put the turkey on the table, then they put the potatoes and the carrots on the table. And then they put the fish and the pickled fish and the cold cuts and the salads and the cakes. And, then they go to the other fridge and then they put the aspic, and then they put the different dips and the different things. And then maybe if there's some table left, they might go even to the pantry and put some more stuff on. And then you can start to eat.
I know where I'm going for dinner.
Right? That's how it looks. And it looks like that in Italian families. It looks like that in Eastern European. You know what I mean? It's just everything goes on the table.
That's a big Southern thing too. Like feeding people
Yes, it is.
is.
That's right.
And I never realized how ingrained that was, because we used to make fun of my mom, you know, in a loving, joking manner. But we'd be like, man, if you don't eat my mom's food, she'll take it personally. And she'll be like, you don't like me? And we're like, no, we love you. We just don't want to eat right now. It's not a big deal. But I didn't realize how ingrained that was until I started making food. And if it was acceptable to me and I enjoyed it, I was good. But then if my husband was like, oh, I don't really like that, or I think you could make that better, he would be giving me like criticism, but in a healthy way, or it's like, you know, I'd prefer this, or can you add this to it? And I used to get so offended. I used to be like, what, my cooking's not good enough? Like in my mind and in my body, that's how I would feel. And I would really internalize it. And the next time after I noticed that, when we started making fun of my mom, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm my mom. I get so butthurt about people not liking my food. Like, and I never realized how much of a, it's not just about feeding someone, it's about providing value to someone else's life. There's a lot of, whenever I host at my house, I feel really bad if I don't have like snacks and drinks and stuff. And it took me almost like a year or two to really feel comfortable with calling up my friend and being like, yo, I don't have any food in my house. I have no snacks. I have no drinks. You're going to be drinking milk or water. And I really don't have much to do, but do you want to come and hang out with me? I really felt weird about asking that of people, because I was like, what do I have to offer if I'm not giving them food? But yeah, that took me a while to kind of come back from a little bit.
Back
in balance.
to loving relationships. You know, in Eastern European culture, I think that goes back to in history when there was no food. Feeding people and being generous with your food was a first sign of loving relationship. So as an Eastern European woman, first thing I pull out is the food. This is my first generous. Then I will sit and say, wait, it's not all about the food. Give yourself, listen, hear them, show empathy. And that comes all natural as the time rolls and you learn that it's much easier to be loving than to be resisting. And our environment mirrors us back.
That reminded me of my grandparents, for whom food seemed to have been almost everything. So just like you were telling as well, like, you know, from early on when I was like a teenager and I went to train, and she always had my suit. So I went there like before to pick up my suit, and I always had to eat something. And right after the training finished, I had to go back, and, you know, because she would take care of the suit of my karate suit, and then I had to eat more, of course, because, you know, I went home by bicycle, so, you know, that was energy, so I had to eat more. And every time I came, like, she would like empty out the fridge on the table and say, oh, we have this and we have that and this sausage, and we went like 50 miles just to, you know, this butcher, and we got that, and it's like if you said no, I'm not hungry, or so it's like wow, it was like an offense, because it was. And then later I realized, like, you know, I had to, even when I lived far on the other side of the world and I came back once per year to visit, it was pure love that was being transferred. Like when she was feeding me or anybody else from the family, she was watering the plant right there. You know, that was her giving, or there even, because it was both of my grandparents, and food for them was very important, and it has to do with the war as well. Because they didn't have, you know, there was no thought of even meat or something like that, like right after the war. And that's when their childhood was, you know, in the 40s and 50s. So they were starving then, and so then after, when it became available, and so then that was their daily joy, and they carried that to the end of their lives. Even right now, still my grandma is still alive. So for them, food, it was ultimate enjoyment, and if they were able to share that, then that was the love that they were sharing. So
I remember you told me one time that even when you were a complete raw vegan and you used to live in Jamaica or Brazil or whatever, and you were complete raw vegan, when you went to visit your grandma and she gave you like meat and potatoes, you'd just eat it because it was love. And it doesn't matter if you were vegan at the time. This was pure love that she was feeding you.
I was just going to say exactly that with those words.
Your words.
Like, it was like 100% raw vegan, even like on the fruitarian side in the end for like a year and a half. But once per year, like when I got the chance to visit home and I was with her, like I wouldn't touch anything from anybody else, not even my mommy or whatever. But when I went to my grandma, there was no way anybody could tell me that was not pure love and that was not nutritious and good food for me. And that, like, I think I went there like a squeeze out sponge, in a soak up for another year until I was able to come back. And that was, like I could see that, that was fulfilling for me and for her, but it was beyond, the physical food. So there was a different exchange.
That's right. That's exactly where I was going to continue on this thought, what you said. Listening past physical is very important in loving relationships, because if you're just going to look at that food, it's just going to meet the body. But if you see what is behind that and beyond that, then you start feeling the love and you start acknowledging the love. And this is where the bonds are made, and this is where the loving relationships, and that has to be practiced and nurtured, those bonds. It's not good enough just to establish loving relationship and then, hey, when the wind blows us together, hello, how are you doing? You were loving to me, I was loving to you, good enough. I think loving relationships have to be nurtured on moment-to-moment basis, really, truly. Even if you're not present with someone, and simply because it goes back to me. In the thought, in the energy field, I can renew that loving thought and that loving feeling of connection. So I think
I had a thought when you were talking about after you've given the food, when you give yourself, when you actively listen. The first thing that popped in my mind was, yes, that's a wonderful practice. What's the blockage? What stops people from doing it? And I thought it's really hard to give yourself to someone else when you don't have yourself, when you don't know yourself. I think that's a big issue where you're trying to give from an empty cup and you end up not creating a loving relationship.
Well, depends from which you're living, right? If you're living from your soul, then that is always you trust and you know that source is renewable and that you'll never get empty. But if you're living from your mind, the reason we can't listen and completely give ourselves, because we are not empty. We are already, when somebody's talking to me, I'm already thinking how I'm going to respond or what is that triggering in me. And I am really not paying attention to the speaker or to the giver. I am paying attention to where am I in that relationship. And this is where the disconnection or discord happens.
What I've been doing when that happens is accepting it. Like going back to your original, it's like, so I've been in the middle of a conversation and I'm like, I was not here for the last a minute and a half. I apologize. Something you said brought me back into my mind and I wasn't here, but now I'm here. I'm back. So I like acknowledge it and like accept it in my own mind of that just happened. And that is normal, but it allows me to bring myself back to the present and back to fully giving myself to the other person.
Yeah.
When you just talked about nurturing loving relationships, I was reminded of the talk that we had the other day about, traditions and I think we touched upon Christmas and Easter and I figured out that to me that really is nurturing loving relationships, because all the story, the background, the culture, that all has its importance as well, but what supersedes all of that to me was that coming together of of people whom I love and whom I love to spend time with.
I thought you were going to say shoes filled with chocolate or something like that.
No, we don't have that.
Oh, was it socks?
Boots on the window.
Not even that. We have the Christkind, remember? The Christ.
Oh yeah, Christkind, yeah.
So, but you had the shoes filled with chocolate, right, Shambhavi?
Yeah, I had boots. We would put boots on the window, and if you were a good child, you got chocolates, and if you were a bad kid, you got coal.
We had the same thing, but the boots were at the foot of the bed.
No, ours was on the window. I remember you saying that this strange man would come into your bedroom. No, ours was on the window.
Oh yeah, so he would come to the window. That's all better.
Slightly better.
You know, funny thing was that my family was poor and they didn't have money for chocolates, but they wanted to in some way reward us. So they would put things like apples or walnuts. Walnuts was the big one because in December there was walnuts already ready for the winter. And I remember I would whisper under my breath and say, "Stupid St. Nicholas gave me walnuts," and my father would say, "What'd you say? You're lucky you didn't get coal."
That's fascinating. I didn't know that was a thing in like around the world, because our thing is in the United States, it's the stockings. So it's like they're socks basically, but they're big sacks. Like they're made to look like a sock, and you hang them in your house, and they get filled with all the little candy and stuff. And if you're bad, you get filled with coal, But one year after I was an adult, my family decided not to buy anything. We decided we were going to make our Christmas presents. And I thought it was great. My stepdad wasn't the best at making stuff. So what he did, he said that when he was little and when we were little, we used to get a brown paper sack full of like pecans, because pecans are what fall in the fall in the South. And it drove me crazy moving to a place where you had to pay $10 for pecans, because I've literally picked them out of my front yard. But we got a brown paper sack full of just like little bitty like toys, a couple of, little things, and pecans. And that was our Christmas gift. And that meant so much to me, so much more than anything that they've ever bought for me or even made, because it was all that they had in a sense where it's like it's a memory that I'm giving to you instead of a gift. The memory and the nostalgic feeling was the gift. And I didn't know that other places did that. I thought that my family was just weird.
I very much so associate many of our holiday times with loving memories and loving relationships, and the whole family was always involved in some way. Everybody participated. We had some lovely traditions, and some of the loving memories that I have and loving relationships only stem from the holiday times, because I didn't get to see some of the cousins throughout the year, only would see them at Christmas and Easter perhaps. So those were very memorable and enjoyable for me.
Nice.
So going back to
acceptance, talked about not pushing back.
Pushing back.
I still have a hard time with that one.
Well, who are you pushing back when you're pushing back? Better question is, what does it mean having hard time? Nobody said that you can't push back. You can push back. I can have a good sparring conversation with Dennis, and I may brutally disagree with him on something.
Brutally?
But we will enjoy it.
Okay, so what's the pushing back all about? It's about not pushing in a way that's uncomfortable?
Pushing back is when you're reacting from your ego to this to prove that, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say that you're better, that you're a winner.
Mm-hmm.
When you identify with it fully, I would put it. When you identify with the pushback, when you take it serious or too serious.
Okay, so I have an example, real life example. So the other day, Eric, you know it's going to be bad. So the other day, Eric got up.
The guy, yes, I'm already have to be in a judgment position.
Right, exactly. So he got up and he made his coffee, and we have these little metal melt-off filters. And instead of putting it in the drying rack for the dishes, he put it in the other sink. And I'm like, why? It's 3 inches. It's 3 inches. Like, why can't you just take that extra 3 inches? He's like, oh, I was in a rush. But it's not when you're in a rush. It's like, it's the same movement. I don't get it. And
your way is right and his way is wrong.
Well, his is a dirty sink. My way is a place that's meant to be for drying things that are wet. His is a sink he was using for God knows what. And then I get to use that filter for my coffee with like chicken juice on it or something.
But you don't have to. You can just rinse your mug. You see, this is where winning comes in.
You're going to tell me I'm wrong, aren't you?
No, not at all. No right or no wrong. Left sink, right sink. It's just a matter of switching and doing your own thing and not having expectation of somebody else. Because the minute I have an expectation of you, I have predisposed myself totally for failure.
Explain.
I expect that you're going to come and visit me tonight. And I firmly expect, and I'm excited, and I am prepared, and I am really.
You made
really
a cake?
And a cake and everything. And then you have a flat tire on the way and you don't come. But because I was so firmly identified with it, because I had huge expectations, I have predisposed myself for failure. Now I feel deflated. I feel disappointed, maybe even angry because I've cooked a big dinner.
Cake.
Had I not been attached to it all and just taken the dinner and sat in my car and brought it to you, it's left sink, right sink, you eat at my house or we eat at your house or whatever it may be. Don't sweat the small stuff, it's called in plain language. You know, I'll give you a better example how I have learned that. When my children were at home before university, Mark played football. And I would come home from work and I would enter into front foyer, and often there was a pile of cleats that I would have to climb over because Mark had a whole or half a football team come after the game to our house. And I would curse in Croatian to the point where all the kids, as soon as they heard the door, they would in Croatian say, da, 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 da. And then Mark went off to university. Oh, and the other thing that I did, my living room was on the second floor. And when Mark would go out with his buddies, sometimes I would wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and being mother, just to check that he's at home. I would just peek down into front hallway and see if his shoes were just left like right in the middle of the stairs. And it was big pain in the ass for me because the shoes were not neatly put in a corner. Then Mark went off to university. And all of a sudden I started missing those cleats and those dirty shoes, to the point where I said when Mark came first time, hey Mark, can you leave those pair of running shoes down in the hallway? It sort of makes me feel nice and warm and it reminds me of you. So you see, it's not worth sweating the small stuff. We have preconceived idea how things should be. You know, my daughter, she was notorious of taking shower and leaving her underwear and her clothes on the way to the shower. And then she ended up in the hospital, a life or death situation. And I thought, and I worried about those underwear on the floor. you kind of gain a perspective, and it comes with age. Wisdom is not free. You have to go through a certain amount of pain in order to become wiser.
Nice.
That reminds me of the I thought that I was prepared for my husband to go, well, he wasn't my husband at the time, for my now husband to go to basic training. I was like, we got this. It's going to be sad, but we got this. It's okay. That mentality was shook from me when I walked. We drove back home, and all of a sudden I was like, we ate lunch there one time. We used to go here. We used to do this. And I walked. I got home. I walked down to the basement where he used to play his video games. And sorry, I get a little emotional because it hit me. I walked into this little office bedroom thing, and there was a full trash can of nothing but Dr. Pepper cans, because he had killed a case of Dr. Pepper before he left. And I just started bawling. And his mother came downstairs because she could hear me. She was like, I can hear you crying. What's wrong? And I just pointed at the Dr. Pepper cans, and I was like, he's not going to drink Dr. Pepper in this house for another 6 months. And I didn't realize that I had associated, like, his stuff with him. Like, it gave me a sense of comfort, when you see these things. And I would disagree that it's with the idea of expectations. Like, expectations are inherently setting you up to fail. I think some expectations are, in my opinion, essential. But I needed to know what those expectations are, because when I labeled those, before he left, I might have labeled those Dr. Pepper cans as, oh my gosh, there's a whole can of Dr. Pepper cans. I got to take it out now. This is something other than it. The label changed when I realized that it was actually just a reminder that he was there. So understanding what you're labeling things as and how it changes from moment to moment will help you manage your own expectations and set reasonable expectations.
If it comes from your mind, it'll change from moment to moment. But if it comes deep from within in your soul, it won't change. And most expectations are mind connected. One of my favorite books is called Awareness, and it's written by by a monk, Anthony DeMello. It is one of my go-to books. And in that book, he says that everything human being does, thinks, and acts upon is out of selfish reasons. And he explains. And in case like this, of these pop cans, I immediately kind of associated with Anthony DeMello. He would say, yeah, because you were the good girl by cleaning the pop cans. You were validating yourself through that action.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly where it would come from. And that's why I was like, it's really important to see, like, acceptance is a really important part, because unless you accept that that's how you're feeling, that this is what it is, you don't get to understand how that label actually resonates with you, what the expectation actually means to you.
It all sounds so complicated, and yet it's also simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's the mark of intellectual conversation.
All right, I've got a good question here. Expectation and trust. Isn't trust really about expectation?
Not always in my case. Trust is from knowing, expectation is from believing. And there is difference. Believing is something that I have heard that happened, and knowing is something that happened and I have experienced.
So if somebody has done something for you, or like you were talking about your son leaving the shoes on the stairs, then is that trust that you're
No, that's a
really
belief.
relying on, or
No,
is
that's
it?
a belief because it happened before. I expect or I believe that it's going to happen again. That's an expectation. But when he was gone, I knew. He took all his shoes, it's gone. I knew.
But if I say trust me, am I not setting up an expectation for you?
It depends on the content. I would immediately check with myself. Am I feeling this trust? Because there is a whole other energetic and intuitive aspect of us coming into play besides what the mind perceives. The minute I am in situation, I'm going to experience the energy and feel it before anybody even says boo. And I will know intuitively where my level of trust is. And if
it makes a lot of sense.
If there is something if that is that the vibrationally is identical to my vibration field in that particular instance, then there will be full trust. But if I am not familiar with that vibration, and if it doesn't exist in my being, or it's not evolved in my being, then I will have only a belief to go on. And
So
in that belief, anything can happen.
So when you're saying learn to trust, then what does that mean?
Trust yourself. Learn to intuitively listen. So trust your gut feeling. Trust your gut feeling. I was in a situation today that I had to practice that, and it's interesting that this conversation would come up because in many situations I am learning to trust that intuitive. It's not always. I have a property that I got an offer to sell, and I wasn't responding to the buyer. And I kept saying, it's been a week. Why haven't you said, hey, hello, I heard you, I'll get back to you or whatever. But I didn't respond at all. And I was checking. I was waiting for a level of guidance for trust that I can completely with confidence respond. There was no
readiness.
There was no presentation of presence.
So what did you do? So did you respond, or are you still waiting?
I have somebody that I bounce things off, and I said, I'm not responding, and person said, so just trust your intuition. And that's exactly what I was waiting. I was waiting for my intuitive guidance. And I wrote back just as honest as that. I'm uncertain to how I should respond, so I hope that you can wait. And that's all there's to it. And there was no pushing back, there was no lying, there was no entanglement, there was no stress, no pressure, no nothing. It was just cluck, 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 cluck. But I waited for the intuition to guide me. And when I say learn to trust, it's that intuitive. It's always the self-love and always self-acceptance. And it's all about how much can I open my mind to the self.
I think I've witnessed this happening with some of my clients and myself. And I never recall, until this conversation, I didn't understand the difference between the expectation that was going on versus the intuition that is going on. So I deal with a lot of abusive situations. and I have a lot of experience in it. So I have expectations. So, for example, if someone raises their voice, I have the expectation in my mind that this is going to be bad. Doesn't matter even what is going to happen, but I have a feeling, I think that I know what is going to happen, and I'm waiting for a validation. But to, the other side of this, I have met people who, when I first met them, I didn't trust. Like, when I look back, I can tell that I had a weird reaction to them, where like I just didn't trust them at first, but then I overlooked because they didn't show me anything that I expected as a red flag. But when I realized the kind of person that they were, I knew, and I was like, that's what that feeling was. So this happens a lot with trauma survivors. They will expect something to happen, and because they expect it to happen, they already take action to stop it from happening or encourage it happening, whichever way you want to go. And when the intuition is actually kicking in, they don't wait for the validation. They don't like go to people and talk to them. They know. They know they either want to hang out with that person or they don't want to hang out with that person. And there is no question. It's because they know they are resonating with something about this person that they know is not going to end up well, or it will end up well. So that really clarified. I'm really glad we had this conversation, because that's a huge issue where you're struggling with what you're going to what you're expecting to happen and your own reactions to it. And then because of that, you often discount your own intuition, because all the times you expected this to happen but it didn't happen makes you feel like that's the only option, is you have to like sit in this confusion, when in reality your intuition will actually tell you how you feel about it.
I've argued with my intuition before, like a prime example. Oh, Eric's gonna come home on Monday. No, he's not. What do you mean he's not? I've seen the plane ticket. He's coming home on Monday. No, he's not coming. What do you mean he's not coming? And then like something happens last minute and he doesn't come, right? But I'm arguing. I'm like, no, it has to come because I've seen the plane ticket. There's physical evidence. You're just being crazy.
We know. We just don't want to validate that we are genuinely true, all-knowing beings, and that we are the light that have just learned to accumulate little fog along our way and pretend that everything is hunky-dory. It's not. This is why we get sick. This is why we get unhappy. This is why we push back. What you brought up, and I want to add onto, I think Willow brought it up. There is also the other aspect for me of loving relationship. It's known in Western world as tough love. It's not always let me cook you a nice meal and put a nice negligee and make it all hunky-dory in world. Often, and I had lots of practice in that respect, you have to trigger a really painful point in someone in order for them to start transforming it. And often it's not, with me, it's hardly ever deliberate. It just comes out, and I am, and from what I understand and I have read, that strong souls, old souls, get that role in our path to trigger and to confront these dark forces, to make them wake up. And the way I know that is part of the loving relationship, when I do that, God forbid should it ever happen amongst any of us, but I check with myself, how did that action make me feel afterwards? How did it leave me? Did it leave me liberated, or did it feel dark and heavy and thick and dense. And I've had to practice tough love in my life, and I don't consider it any less loving. And people have had to, God knows they had to practice tough love with me as a child. I mean, I'll just tell you this much. I got married to my husband at age of 15 and a half. So you can imagine that my mother had to practice and my father had to practice tough love. And that's a whole other session where I think that also is part of loving relationship.
You know, this seems to be a reoccurring theme in the last three interviews we've had, of kind of like with children. It's like giving them that opportunity to not be coddled, but to be kind of challenged to take care of themselves in some way, and kind of grow and believe in themselves. It sounds to me like what you were saying there is very much like that, where you're, to some degree, it's like we're pushing each other. And I don't know, is that, because that doesn't sound like it sounds like pushing, not
it
letting.
sounds like dichotomy on its own. Yes, I know what you're saying, but check with yourself and see how you feel. If I'll take my son and let me use an example. I don't know. A very good friend comes to my house, and all of a sudden, money is gone, and this is a repeating behavior, and it makes me conclude that this person is taking my money. Now, I check with myself, and I have an option of confronting this person and saying, have you done this? I believe you have, but I don't know for sure. Please tell me the truth and we'll work through it. The other way is to isolate myself from that situation, flight or fight, and just dissolve that relationship, or accept that this person is a thief and just hide my stuff. And I will check with myself and see what the most appropriate vibration will come up. And I will trust that, and I will go with that. And I will not, if I present it correctly, if I show sensitivity and empathy, and present it properly, it should always leave me clear. It should not leave dark energy within me. And actually, it will be beneficial for that person also, in spite of the fact that it may be confrontational at that moment. It's like letting children touch the candle and burn themselves. It'll be very uncomfortable, but they will learn and not do it again. So now, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
I was thinking of situations with children, just like you were talking about with the candle. For me, it's always electrical outlets, because those are always very dangerous. But I like the candle analogy, so that's what I'm going to go for. So, what I'm referring to is the expectation versus the trust. You don't let them stick their whole body in a fireplace, because you know what's going to happen. You know that, that's dangerous, that they could possibly die. But you also have to trust that they are smart enough to learn that when they touch the candle, when they get near it. I'm just reminded, I had this experience with my youngest nephew. I go out camping and I have a knife that I told my oldest nephew he could have the spare one when he got old enough to be responsible with it. And it's like a fire starter knife. My little nephew, who was probably 3 years old at the time, he reached out and he grabbed it like this. And the second his hand touched the knife, his mom goes, and I said, it's okay, because you know what he did? I didn't jerk the knife away. I didn't, grab his hand. I didn't react. I let him do it. And he grabbed it and he was like, because he could tell that it was sharp. But I had trust in him that even if he does cut his hand, it's not going to kill him. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be good. But it was like his mother's expectation that he was going to hurt himself and she was going to have to deal with it, and it was going to, do this and do that, and all these expectations. If I had not allowed myself to trust this child, he would have had the wrong interpretation of what actually happened. He never would have gotten, or he probably would have eventually, but he wouldn't have gotten the experience of touching that knife and saying, oh, that's sharp, that could hurt me.
But sometimes, I want to be preventive for my own benefit. If I have, I don't know, I have a China cup and that kid goes for that China cup, I'm going to say, wait, this is mine and it's off limits. But
here's
if it's
a dollar
something
store
that is,
cup.
what's that?
Here's a dollar store cup. Go nuts.
Yeah, that's right. Here is a plastic one or whatever. Go crazy. I saw something very funny the other day on Facebook of your favorite places. There's this kid holding a box of Hershey's chocolate powder, the cocoa mix. And he knows that his mom probably makes him very good chocolate milk with that. So he takes a spoon and he puts it into this cocoa powder and he puts it in his mouth. Mm-hmm. And of course, on its own, it's bitter and it's powder. It's not going to melt. And now he's sitting with his mouth full with this powder stuck in his mouth, and he doesn't know what to do with it. And I thought, this is a really good situation to check myself. What do I do? Do I let him blow it out now all over my nice furniture, or do I say something, or do I give him something to spit, or I make him swallow it, or what do you do? You check, where is my own selfish point of view in here? And, is it dangerous to him? This is not dangerous, so let him experiment. But if they're going to hurt themselves severely or hurt something else, I think that, and they insist, once they're corrected, if they insist, then there has to be a boundary. And if some sort of punishment, we touched upon that. My parents, they definitely punished me. If I tell you the kind of punishment that my father succumbed me to extract what he called truth out of me, you wouldn't believe this. But funny thing is that I made it into a competition and I didn't feel any less loved than if he didn't. I lied to my father, and he said something. There was a little well, and I had to go and fetch water and bring it for chickens. And I thought, darn, why do I have to carry water? Why didn't he go carry water? So I went and I threw the bucket. I filled it up with water and I let it go down to the bottom, because now I know I don't have to carry the water because there is no bucket. So my father says, he knows his daughter. He comes and he says, you did this deliberately, didn't you? No, I didn't. You did it deliberately. Just admit and everything is going to be okay. Nope, I didn't. Okay, good. I know you're lying. You're going for that bucket. He grabs me by the feet, dunks me in. Grab that bucket with your hand and bring it up. I'm kicking. He brings me up. Did you bring the bucket? No, you're going back. Or tell me, did you lie or didn't you lie? Anyway, I wouldn't succumb. And finally, he's just frustrated, ready to kill me. And he lets me go, and I'm thinking, I won this one.
Typical Slavic woman.
And I was like 7 years old.
I can relate.
But I never felt less loved for the punishment that, would that be a switch or a belt or whatever it was. And I wasn't allowed to run. I would take it and I thought, no, you can't beat as much as I can take. And it was just the willpower to win. And a lot of children will challenge just to win. And I don't think that there is right or wrong. Whoever wins, someday you win, someday you lose, and it's just part of it. But I don't think that children feel less loved because they're spanked, but I think that children feel less loved because they're less loved. Because love cannot be denied even in war. Love is love. It cannot be denied.
Nice.
Anyway, did I talk too much?
No, you're great, but I think we're out of time.
We are.
That one quick. Boy, these things are going on faster and faster.
Yeah.
It's great. It was a
No.
great episode.
Yes, very much so.
Very much so enjoy being part of you guys. Sometimes I'm on the Facebook and I want to say something and I'm going, I can't respond fast enough.
Well, see
We
now.
thoroughly enjoy all of your comments, just so you know. It's
Absolutely. And we
it's
love
always a
getting
delight when
comments.
we look, I look over and I'm like, oh, there she is. Very cool.
Nice.
The other day, I'm checking myself and I'm thinking, okay, I can see that I have expectations of responding, that you will receive my message in time, and that doesn't happen because by the time it goes to the Facebook and then to you and blah blah blah.
And then I tried to get it to tell them, like a.
That's right. And then you repeat what I said, and I'm saying, well, that didn't come across the way I wanted it. It's a good lesson to be on both sides, to be sharing like this and to be on.
Nice. We really appreciate you, Shambhavi. You're awesome.
What about you, my pal? What's he saying? Dennis?
Well, I do hope we can enjoy your presence again soon, because I think you have much to share there. I certainly thoroughly enjoyed having you and listening to you.
Thank you. You're just being kind as you normally are, but I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
I don't think he's kind for the sake of being kind. If he wasn't going to say that, he'd probably just say nice shirt or something like that.
I know Dennis for a long time. For how long now? Maybe 20 years, 15 years. And I've known him when probably more so than he knew himself, but I always saw the good in him. Man, you people have one good man on your hands there.
We know it.
You're probably going to get him out of Germany to come to Canada and buy field with us and make a commune.
Yeah, let's do that. But for now, I think we have to close this popsicle stand. On Wednesday, we have a show about water. The water of life from all these different angles. So I'm sure you'll all enjoy that. And yeah. And Michael?
Good. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you.
I'm
Thank
waiting
you
for
so
you.
much.
I'm waiting for Michael to close out the show, but he's just sitting there smiling.
Well, I was just waiting for everybody to stop talking, and I'll say something. But let me just say thanks everybody. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope this was valuable to you. We do this every Monday and Wednesday at 5:35 p.m. Eastern time, and that's 2:35 Pacific time.
Yeah,
And stay tuned for more.
that's right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
More water from the fountain.
More water from the fountain. Okay, I'm playing
Plenty
the outro
today.
now, for real. Bye, everybody.